I run my fingers along the edge of my oak desk, the one I assembled myself over a long weekend 3 years ago, following instructions in 4 languages because the English version was missing pages. The morning light comes through my office window at exactly the angle I calculated when I chose this apartment, falling across the framed photo of my CPA certification on the wall. My name on that certificate, Rachel Caldwell, looks exactly the same as it does on my business cards, my lease, and the investment account I've been quietly building since I was 22. The doorbell rings, and I feel it before I answer it. That specific tightening in my shoulders, the one that only happens when my family visits. My mother sweeps in first, her eyes doing that rapid inventory scan she's never bothered to hide. She takes in the built-in bookshelves, the organized kitchen, the lack of clutter, and somehow finds all of it wanting. "It still feels so corporate in here," she says, pressing her cheek near mine without actually touching it. "You know your brother has this incredible artist's loft now. Exposed brick, these beautiful hanging plants everywhere. It feels lived in. Warm." My father follows, shaking his head at the parking meter he clearly didn't feed long enough. My younger brother, Daniel, comes in last, wearing a jacket that costs more than my first car payment, even though he hasn't held a steady job in 4 years. "This place is so you," Daniel says, dropping onto my sofa without taking off his shoes. He means it as a critique. Everything organized, labeled, optimized. No room for spontaneity. He says spontaneous the way other people say successful, like it's the only metric worth measuring. I offer coffee. My mother immediately pivots to tell me about the Italian espresso machine Daniel has in his loft. My father asks if I have the good creamer, not the generic kind. I stand in my kitchen, pressing my thumbnail into my palm, and remind myself that I invited them here. This was my choice. "I got the promotion," I say when there's a pause. "Senior Financial Analyst. They're moving me to the downtown office." "Oh, that's nice," my mother says, already turning to Daniel. "Tell her about the gallery, sweetheart." Daniel leans forward, suddenly animated. He's been working on a series of large-scale paintings, he explains. A gallery in the Arts District has expressed interest, maybe, in a potential show, possibly in the fall, if he can get the pieces finished. My parents watch him like he's describing a moon landing. "We're so proud of you," my father says, and his voice carries a weight it never carries when he speaks to me. I have a memory from when I was 16. I'd been accepted into the summer accounting internship at a firm downtown, the only high schooler they'd ever selected. I told my parents at dinner. My father said, "That's great, kiddo," and then immediately asked Daniel, who was 13, if he'd decided whether to try out for the school play. The conversation never came back to me. The scene in my living room now is the same scene with different furniture. After they leave, I stand at my desk and open the spreadsheet I've maintained for 11 years. Every loan, every favor, every temporary financial arrangement. The emergency $4,000 my parents asked for when I was 24, which they explained was to cover a gap in their mortgage. I found out later it paid for Daniel's first set of professional art supplies and a weekend trip to Santa Fe described as necessary for his creative development. The $1,800 I sent when my mother said she had unexpected medical bills. The receipts she accidentally left in a shared email thread showed they went to a spa resort in Sedona. I document everything. I always have. Not out of bitterness. Not at first. Out of the same instinct that made me keep every receipt, every contract, every email confirmation. Preparation has always been the only armor I know how to make. 6 months later, I'm in a conference room on the 14th floor, closing a deal I've been building for 8 weeks. The client shakes my hand with both of his. "You are exceptionally thorough, Miss Caldwell," he says. I can't tell you how rare that is. I smile, and mean it, and drive home thinking about the retirement account I've been maxing out since I was 25. It currently holds a number that would make most people my age feel dizzy. I don't tell anyone about it. Not my friends, not my coworkers, and certainly not my family. Some information is too valuable to share with people who have never respected its value. My mother calls on a Thursday evening while I'm reviewing my investment portfolio. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something sensitive." I close my laptop. "Okay. You know Daniel's gallery show fell through." She pauses for effect. He's been devastated, absolutely crushed. His therapist says this kind of creative rejection can be genuinely traumatic, and she's recommended a residency program. 6 weeks in Taos, New Mexico. Painting, workshops, healing. It would completely transform his practice. I wait. It's $12,000, she says. We've already looked into it. There's a spot available next month. I ask who's paying for it. Well, that's the thing, she says, and her voice shifts to the texture of honey poured slowly. Your father and I are stretched right now. The house needs a new roof, and we've been helping Daniel with his studio rent since the gallery thing fell through. We thought, since you're doing so well, maybe you could think of it as an investment in your brother's future. Family investing in family. I think of the spreadsheet. The running total that now exceeds $14,000 over 11 years, none of it repaid, none of it ever acknowledged as a loan. I need to think about it, I say. Of course, she says warmly. I knew you'd understand. What she means is, I knew you'd say yes. I don't say yes. I say I need to think about it, and then I spend 3 days actually thinking about it, which is 3 days longer than anyone in my family has ever spent thinking about what I need. On the 4th day, I call back. I can't do $12,000, I say. The silence is long enough that I check to see if the call dropped. Rachel, my father's voice. I didn't know he was on the line. Your brother needs this. Do you understand what we're telling you? He's struggling. I understand that. You have more than enough. You've always been the responsible one. That means you have a responsibility to the people you love. That word responsibility lands the way it always does, like a hand pressing down on my shoulders. The weight of being capable in a family that has decided capability is consent to be used. I'm not going to do $12,000, I say again. My voice surprises me with its steadiness. We'll discuss this later, my mother says, and hangs up. I stand in my kitchen holding my phone and I notice something unfamiliar. My hands aren't shaking. My stomach isn't knotted with guilt. There's a clarity in my chest that hasn't been there before, clean-edged and unfamiliar, like a window opened in a room that's been sealed too long. 2 weeks later, I leave for a conference in Chicago that I've been looking forward to for months. 4 days, all expenses covered by the firm. I present a paper on forensic accounting methodology on the 2nd day, and a professor from Northwestern tells me afterward that it's some of the clearest thinking on the subject he's encountered in years. I go back to my hotel room and sit on the bed and let myself feel proud. No one to redirect the moment. No one to say, that's nice. But did you hear what Daniel is working on? I come home on a Friday evening, rolling my suitcase through my building's lobby, already thinking about the bath I'm going to take and the novel I've been saving for a quiet weekend. My apartment smells wrong before I even get the door fully open. A different shampoo, takeout containers, the specific density of someone else having lived inside my space. The living room is rearranged. My reading chair has been pushed to face the window. A duffel bag sits open against the wall, clothes spilling out. A phone charger I don't own snakes across my kitchen counter. Hello? I call. Daniel appears from my bedroom hallway, phone in hand, wearing one of my oversized conference t-shirts. Oh, hey, you're back. My jaw tightens. What are you doing here? Mom and Dad said I could crash here for a bit while I sort some stuff out. He says it with the easy confidence of someone who has never once had to consider whether a space belongs to him. I've been working on new pieces. The light in your living room is actually incredible in the mornings. I set my suitcase down very carefully. When did they give you a key to my apartment? He shrugs. A few weeks ago? I don't know, they had a copy made. I've been here since Tuesday. I take a breath. I take another one. And then I do something I've never done in 31 years of being the responsible one, the capable one, the one who accommodates. I call my parents. My mother answers on the second ring. Sweetheart, I was going to call you. Why does Daniel have a key to my apartment? We had a copy made when you gave us the spare last Christmas. It was just practical, in case of emergency. This is not an emergency. Your brother needed somewhere stable while he works through this difficult period. Your place was sitting empty while you were traveling. My place wasn't sitting empty. I live here. I was at a work conference. The work that pays your bills, my father's voice cuts in, is the same reason you can afford a nice apartment with a spare room. Some people aren't as lucky. I look at Daniel, who has settled back onto my sofa and resumed scrolling his phone, completely untroubled. I need you both to understand something, I say. This conversation isn't about Daniel's difficult period. This conversation is about the fact that you made a decision about my property without asking me. You don't get to do that. We're your parents. I know who you are. I hang up. I look at Daniel. You need to pack your things, I tell him. He looks up, genuinely startled, as if this outcome had never occurred to him as a possibility. Seriously, where am I supposed to go? That's a question for Mom and Dad. I pick up his duffel bag and set it by the door. You have tonight. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling a locksmith. He stares at me for a long moment, and I can see him cycling through the usual tools. Guilt, charm, wounded pride. None of them find purchase. I meet his eyes without flinching, and eventually, he gets up. That night, after he leaves, I change every lock myself. I've watched enough YouTube tutorials on home maintenance to manage it in 40 minutes. I sit on my reading chair, which I've moved back to its original position, and I feel the silence of my apartment the way you feel clean air after being somewhere stuffy for too long. The next morning I call my bank. I have a specific savings account that only I know about. It's connected to no shared accounts, accessible through no other login. I've been putting money into it steadily since I was 26, a private reservoir built one careful deposit at a time. I check the balance, which I always know to the dollar, and I open a new document on my laptop. I start at the beginning. Every financial request my family has made of me since I turned 18. Every amount I gave, loaned, or was pressured into covering. The dates, the stated reasons, the actual outcomes where I could document them. I have the receipts literally, in many cases. A folder in my cloud storage labeled with a neutral name, housing bank statements, text message screenshots, and a running note document I've updated for years. I've been keeping this file the way some people keep a journal, not planning to use it, just needing it to exist. Now I open a browser tab and search for attorneys specializing in financial exploitation and unauthorized entry. I'm not shaking. My hands are very still. The attorney's office is on the 4th floor of a building downtown with good natural light. Her name is Miss Okonkwo, and she wears reading glasses on a chain and has a direct way of holding eye contact that I find immediately reassuring. I slide the folder across her desk. She opens it. She reads. She turns pages with the steady attention of someone who does not need to perform being impressed, but is. After 10 minutes, she takes off her glasses. This is thorough, she says. I've had years to compile it. The unauthorized key duplication and entry into your residence is actionable on its own. She picks up the bank statement from the Sedona trip. But this pattern of financial deception and misrepresentation, that's the stronger case. They represented these requests as emergencies. They were not emergencies. They were never emergencies, I say. She nods. Let me ask you something. Are you prepared for this to change your family relationships permanently? I look at her. Miss Okonkwo, I'm 31 years old. I have given my family $14,000 I will never see again. My brother has been living in my apartment without my permission, and my parents made a copy of my key without asking. My family relationships changed permanently a long time ago. I just wasn't acknowledging it yet. She uncaps her pen. The process is slower than anyone who's never gone through it would expect, and faster than I feared. Miss Okonkwo is methodical in the way I respect above almost all other things. She files in the right order, notifies the right parties, requests the right documentation. When my mother calls, twice, and then my father, and then Daniel, I let all three go to voicemail and forward the recordings to Miss Okonkwo's office. My father's message is the longest. His voice moves through phases: disappointment, anger, soft cajoling, back to anger. At one point he says, "We gave you everything." I note the timestamp and add it to the folder, because what they gave me was the experience of watching everything be given to someone else while I was told to be grateful for the lesson. My mother's message is shorter. You're hurting this family, she says. Whatever we did, you don't do something like this to people who love you. I listened to it once. I don't listen to it again. 3 weeks before the hearing, I receive a handwritten letter from Daniel. He's staying with a friend in Phoenix, he writes. He says he had no idea what Mom and Dad told me, had no idea about the money, that he just thought I was generous and things were fine. His handwriting is the same big looping cursive from when we were kids, and I sit with the letter for a long time. I don't know how much of it is true. I know that not knowing is the point, that a lifetime of watching resources flow in one direction without conversation or consent makes it impossible to fully trust the shape of anything my family tells me. I write him back a single paragraph. I tell him I hope he finds a steadier path. I don't tell him how the case is going. The morning of the hearing, I wear navy, a color I've always associated with precision and credibility. My heels click against the courthouse floor with a deliberateness that is not performance, it's just the pace I walk when I know exactly where I'm going. My parents are already in the hallway. My mother looks smaller than I expect, which is always how it goes. The people who take up the most space in your interior life are never as large in the real world. My father's suit is the one he wears to church, slightly too formal for a civil hearing, and I recognize the strategy respectability as armor. My mother moves toward me. Rachel, please, before this goes any further, we can talk. I look at her. I remember being 12 years old at a school award ceremony, walking back from the podium with a certificate for academic achievement, scanning the auditorium for my parents' faces, finding them leaned over to Daniel's row, helping him with something. Not watching. I think we've said everything we need to say, I tell her. Sweetheart. My father steps forward, voice low. Think about what you're doing to your mother. She hasn't been sleeping. You're destroying the family over money. You made financial decisions about my money, I say. I'm addressing that through the appropriate channels. That's not destruction. That's accountability. The courtroom doors open. I walk through them. Miss Okonkwo presents the case with the same methodical clarity I felt in her office. The documentation appears on a screen: bank statements, text messages, the letter my mother sent confirming that the $4,000 was for a family emergency, the receipt from Sedona that I located through a shared loyalty rewards account my mother had added me to years ago, without realizing what she'd shared access to. The judge is a woman in her 60s who listens with absolute stillness and asks two sharp questions at the end. My parents' attorney argues that family financial arrangements are informal by nature, that there was no malicious intent, that I'm characterizing generosity between relatives as exploitation. The judge listens to this too. Her expression does not change. When she speaks, it is with the specific economy of someone who does not waste words. The pattern documented here goes beyond informal family arrangements, she says. The plaintiff has demonstrated a consistent practice of misrepresentation on the part of the defendants to obtain financial assistance under false pretenses. Additionally, the unauthorized duplication and use of access to the plaintiff's residence constitutes a clear violation. She looks down at her notes, then back up. I find in favor of the plaintiff. The words land in the courtroom and just stay there. Total judgment, $14,200 in repayment of documented financial losses, $8,000 in additional damages, and legal fees. My mother makes a sound I don't turn around to identify. My father says something to his attorney that I can't hear. I look at my hands folded on the table in front of me, and I notice again, as I did the first night I changed my locks, that they are completely still. Outside the courthouse, standing on the steps in spring light that is just starting to carry real warmth, Miss Okonkwo shakes my hand. You were an exceptionally prepared client, she says. Thank you for seeing what was there to see. I drive home along the longer route, through the part of the city where the river is visible between buildings. I don't listen to anything. The silence in the car is the kind that doesn't need to be filled. That evening, I make dinner from ingredients I've had in my refrigerator all week, a recipe I've been meaning to try. I eat at my own table in my own kitchen under the lights. I hung the specific distance from the ceiling to avoid any glare on the countertop below. I don't call anyone. I don't feel the need to announce anything. There are 3 contacts I remove from my phone that night. Not in anger, not in ceremony. In the same quiet, practical way, I've handled every necessary adjustment in my life. The decision has been made over years, by 1,000 small moments that accumulated into clarity. The act itself is just documentation. Several weeks later, a colleague leans over my desk and asks if I've heard that the firm is considering me for a newly created position, Director of Strategic Finance, a role that didn't exist 6 months ago. She says it like I should be surprised. I thank her and open the proposal I've already begun drafting in preparation, because I heard the conversations in the hallway 3 weeks ago, and I believe in preparation as the closest thing to certainty that life offers. My apartment has new plants. I know nothing about plants, technically, but I checked 3 books out of the library on the subject and followed the instructions, and they are thriving in the south-facing windows in a way that is quietly satisfying in exactly the proportion I expected. On my desk, beside my CPA certificate, I've framed the photo from the Chicago conference me at the podium. Mid-sentence, hands moving. A woman from my building stops me in the lobby one morning, a few weeks after the ruling. She's seen me around for 2 years, but we've never spoken. She's just moved through her own difficult situation. She says I don't press for details, and she noticed that I always seem to know exactly where I'm going. How do you do that? She asks. You always seem so sure. I think about the spreadsheet, the oak desk assembled from flawed instructions, the locks I changed myself at midnight, 11 years of documentation filed under a neutral name in a cloud folder that no one else knew existed. I've just learned, I tell her, that nobody else is going to keep track of what you're owed. So you have to. She nods like this means something to her, and maybe it does. The following Saturday, I'm driving on the coastal road north of the city, windows down, the kind of morning that doesn't ask anything of you. The case is closed. My documentation folder still exists, organized and complete, a record of who I was and what it cost and what I did about it. Maybe I'll delete it someday. Maybe I'll keep it the way you keep old journals, not to reread, but to know they exist. Proof that something happened and you survived it accurately. On the back seat is a bag of books from the library, a road atlas I bought at a gas station last week for no practical reason, and a travel brochure for Iceland that a coworker left on my desk after her vacation. I've always made decisions slowly and kept them quietly. I'm already doing the math in my head: optimal timing, best season, the kind of northern light photographers describe in terms that sound almost impossible until you're standing in it. I have a passport that's been waiting for a second stamp. I think it's about time.